Hey everybody, I'm Andres,
I'm Scott.
I'm Abe.
and this is Between Two Stands, a classical musicians podcast about classical music.
I think we nailed it. That's our best one yet.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that was definitely our first take. Um, we have a couple
It's
really good
unanimous.
guests today, guys.
Oh man, I had such a great time. Like, I'm looking forward. This interview is definitely one of our best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got a really talented pianist and podcaster and a composer in her own right, Lara Downes, and she's really has like a very unique take on classical music today, and yeah, just really thought that it's I think people are going to really enjoy that perspective.
Yeah, and it was great to hear about all of her endeavors and the kind of research she's been doing to bring undiscovered or underrepresented composers into the canon.
Just such a kind and generous person too. Like, I think
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think you'll all really enjoy it.
yeah.
So, with that said, let's hop into it.
Welcome, Laura.
Good to be
Welcome.
here.
Thank you so much for
I
being here.
yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So we started asking our guests, a question that we wanted to ask you, and that's what music is on your stand right now. Like, what are you working on?
I have no idea. Uh, Stand meaning iPad, probably.
Yeah,
There's a
right.
lot. There's a lot. Oh, I'll tell you what's actually on my stand is proofs of my own new editions that I'm making of it's a Scott Joplin songbook. It's new editions of Scott Joplin's piano music that is coming out via Theodore Presser because I am now a publishing magnate, not magnet, but magnate,
Uh,
um, as well as other things. So, so I've got this album coming out this week, and then the editions are coming in April, and I have that on my stand as well as many emails saying, "Hey, can you get those proofs back to us?"
So when you say editions, like you're just talking about like just reprinted versions of original Joplin tunes.
Yeah, we seem to have gotten really quickly into Joplin, but that's what's on my mind. But playing the Joplin works, there's really very little in the way of direction and it's performance suggestions, and there like one main glaring issue is that he never wrote any tempo indications.
Hmm.
And
oh,
the one thing that he occasionally wrote, well, he writes a lot about like play in a march tempo and nobody knows what that is actually, or he'll write like don't play this too fast and nobody knows what that means either. So I'm trying to kind of like revive them, sorry, not revise them, revive them, and just make them a little easier to interpret. And I guess taking my own performance thoughts from my recording and performances of them. It's fun. I think it'll open them up a bit.
so
That
do you?
sounds incredible.
Yeah, I mean, do you have source materials from him that sort of indicate things that aren't in the music, or are?
No, they were just never there.
Oh wow,
They don't
Yeah,
exist.
they just don't exist.
that's
Well, this
incredible.
That's
started
good.
because this goes back to my Rising Sun project, which we can talk about. And in that case, we've put out some editions of works by H.T. Burleigh, by Nathaniel Dett, that really had just messy first editions that really needed a lot of correction. These Joplin things they're not, it's not a question of errata. It's just a question of kind of clarifying things.
See, I
Wow.
think that's kind of cool because I mean, take Bach for example. I mean, there's so many open-ended things with Bach. I mean, obviously, like melodically and harmonically, it's like very clear. But in terms of dynamic, in terms of even tempo stuff, it's very open-ended, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what kind of makes it cool, and that's what makes each performance very unique. When composers kind of write too much, it kind of narrows the performance ability. So that's great
Mm-hmm.
that you get to kind of put your own spin on it.
Well, it's another place where, when you're looking in the sort of further reaches of the repertoire, I mean, we grew up with how many different editions of Bach or Beethoven, right? I mean,
Right.
lots of thoughts about that, lots of ideas. And, when you come to music by Black composers or whatever that's not sort of so central to the canon, it's like, oh, there's one edition. Okay. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, we were over the summer. I played a Florence Price quartet, and I was just shocked by it. Just seems like there's multiple endings for some of the movements. It's almost like it's still a sketch in some
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Yeah,
Um, so it would be nice for someone to go through those too,
for
and
sure.
sort of make sure that it is what she intended.
Well, I mean, the Florence Price concerto that we're playing is like a prime example because when that was first discovered, recovered, what was found was just a two piano score. So the orchestration was actually just reconstructed by Trevor Weston. And that's the form in which I first performed it. And then in the meantime, the original orchestra parts turned up at a garage sale in Indiana.
Wow, that is
But
amazing.
no, it was nuts. And so I think the edition that we're
Wow.
using from Shermer is kind of like the fifth revision because I played the piece last summer with Keith Lockhart and we found tons of things that needed to be corrected. It's an ongoing process, and it kind of teaches us a lesson, I think, about these older pieces of music that we know so well because they too went through, I'm sure, so many versions and corrections, and
I'm kind of fascinated with the editing process that you're in with some of these tunes. Like, do you find that as a way to as a creative outlet for yourself to like this is maybe not maybe nobody else would ever do it this way, but this is what I like, and these are the spices that I want to taste in the music here.
mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
that's so fun.
I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. Like, because, is it exciting or terrifying or both? Yeah, because some of it is personal, some of it's very subjective, of course. Not so much when we're talking about. I mean, it was really interesting going through the Florence Price piece and something that is clearly a wrong note. But even that, I'm like second guessing myself, 10 times, right?
Absolutely.
So you mentioned you like people, or was it you? I don't know. Someone found this score at a garage sale in Indiana, um, and your Rising Sun project is a bunch of amalgamation of a bunch of different works that are like little known composers, right? And little known and I'm just wondering, what is the process of finding these composers and these works, and how where do you start? Where do you start looking for these pieces?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the Florence Price story, which we should probably quickly state for listeners who don't know, that's kind of sort of the most dramatic example, right? That she died in 1953, and it wasn't until 2009 that really the bulk of her music turned up in an abandoned house outside of Chicago, just like chaotic mess of boxes of manuscripts that had been abandoned, which was a chance discovery because this young couple had bought the house and they were sort of demolishing it to remodel it, and that just blows my mind and makes me wonder how many other situations there are like
Right.
that.
Right.
But in my project, which is shaped around the mission of recording music by Black composers that's never been recorded before, it's a lot of archives, it's a lot of connecting with scholars and researchers. And what I found actually when I got started is that there's a huge community, not just in sort of academic circles, but they're just people who have been collecting this stuff and, trying to preserve it. It's really moving, actually. People who would just write to me and say, this has kind of been a hobby of mine for a lot of years. I have a list. Do you want to see it? And I was like, yes, please.
That's great.
Yeah.
This like a
Yeah.
rabbit hole thing? Like you find somebody who's then excited and like, oh, have you talked to these people? And they have this collection and
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I mean, I have to admit there's so many leads that have come my way that I haven't even had the time yet to investigate because there's just a lot out there.
well, it just goes to show you how much isn't out there for everybody to hear yet, and still to be discovered.
Yeah.
It's terrific.
Well, that kind of makes me wonder too. Like, I wanted to ask you. Like, I'm sure you're meeting so many people, you know, like you said, even outside of like scholars and whatever, just people. Like, has this process gotten you to meet really interesting people? Any like cool stories that you remember from like from this journey?
So many. Yeah. I mean, so I was just in LA last night. I'm starting to work on a piece that's being created for me by the Boston Pops, and it's a concerto built on Billy Strayhorn's works. And so in the process of researching composers for Rising Sun, I'm really interested in the people who sort of meet at crossroads and come from blended traditions. And I knew that Strayhorn had this classical background, and then so I was looking through his catalog, and I found this website, and that seemed to be a database of his work. And so I was looking through, and there was a contact us button, and I clicked it, and I got an email back from somebody who turned out to be his niece, and she's just like stewarding this whole project herself. So we've become, friends, and just gotten to know the family and gotten to know so much more about his work and his life. So, it's funny. It's one of these things, like, at the same time, it shows you how big the world is, as we're saying, there's so much music out there, and also how small the world is.
Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, just getting the insight of that family, like that you might not have gotten before. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about like how much of a musician's training is in a small room, and how much more there is to learn outside of that. And I liked what you said about how small the world is and how big the music community can be.
Yeah. I really think that's the best thing about this energy, this effort to broaden the canon. It's just, I don't know, especially as a pianist, right? Growing up, you have this idea that there is this big pile of music, like on your music stand, right? That you're going to spend a whole lifetime getting through, but that it's really prescribed. It's like, okay, here are all the Beethoven sonatas, and here are all the Chopin this, right? And there's not really any reason to look outside of that, because it's so much as it is. But when that pile stays the same, then it's like everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's working their way through everyone's climbing this same mountain. And so I just think it's so amazing to discover how much more broad the landscape is. So
I was curious with your Rising Sun album, do you, like, for example, it was Deep River, I think. Was that one of the tunes on that?
Mm-hmm.
It was there's for vocals, right? There's a singer originally. So you were obviously you weren't singing. I don't know how your voice is, but you were singing. You were playing the piano part. So do you rearrange all these original manuscripts to make it for piano, or like how much of your writing goes into those, or is it just mainly just transcribing it for piano?
Right. So it's a mix of those things. I've done some things that are just transcriptions. I've been working with a great group of arrangers. Some things, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Deep River as a song. But I also think it's interesting to rearrange some of these pieces so that they do find, kind of a different audience. I guess particularly when it comes to spirituals, if what you want to do is really just investigate the musical aspect of the song, then, those are very context heavy, right? With text. So, right. And I've always been like that as a pianist. I just kind of am obsessed with song anyway. So it's, I think it's just, again, it's kind of giving maybe a different life to something that's already very well known and very beloved.
Yeah, it was a beautiful, I listened to your Tiny Desk concert. It was just really, really, it was really beautiful. And that song in particular.
That Deep River, that's not me. That's Samuel Coleridge Taylor. That's an arrangement that he did as part of his big collection of African American spirituals. So those are like virtuoso piano arrangements by him. Yeah, I've also recorded Deep River as a in an arrangement with the Public Quartet as an instrumental. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, got it. I gotta check out the other Deep Rivers out there. That's awesome.
When you're doing your own version, how much do you let the text influence what you're doing on the instrument? Or do you try to explore the different ways to get away from that, to maybe show off the harmonies that might be ignored or overlooked, overshadowed by the serious text?
So I think I'm a very singing kind of a pianist. Like I have this memory of my first piano teacher, like jumping around the room saying sing sing, and I always did. Like that's just what I hear out of the piano. People who play the piano another way, it's very foreign to me. So I think that if there is text, I'm always hearing the text, and that determines a lot about phrasing and push and pull and rhythm and all that. What was really surprising to me was I was talking with a jazz pianist recently, and we were talking about the American Songbook standards, and like I sang a little snatch of some tune, and he wasn't thinking about the text. It turned out he wasn't thinking about the text. Like for him, because that's that repertoire, like he's listening to a tradition of piano versions of that tune, and then the text is not even any more central in his mind. Whereas like if I take a jazz tune, I'm totally hearing the text, and that's telling me what to do. It's two ways of looking at the.
That's funny. Yeah. I don't listen. That's funny. I kind of relate to him. I don't listen to the lyrics of songs. It takes me like 30 times until I'm like, oh, the lyrics are kind of good in this song, but I don't know. I'm just not a lyric guy.
Yeah, but see, like I'm a writer too, so I think that's it. It's just words.
So between being a writer, a pianist, podcast host, right, the Rising Sun Project, you have also the My Promise Project, right? I mean, you have so many things. Like, do you have?
Do you sleep?
Yeah,
I don't sleep. No, I'm bad at sleeping. But I don't know that the not sleeping has very much to do with everything that I'm doing. I think possibly the not sleeping has to do with like worrying about the things that I'm doing. I don't know. I like to be operating on many levels. I think this transition, whatever this time is, this pandemic thing, we've all taken on other activities. It was actually good for me because I had been doing all these things and maybe feeling a little bit strange about that. And then this has given me an opportunity to kind of see how they all fit together, and that it's okay. Like this is just the fullness of, who I am as a musician. A bit of organizational skill is needed, yes, to make it work.
Yeah. So you also have that NPR, the music series Amplify, which is kind of like what we're doing now, but I guess NPR is sponsoring, which is kind of cool. Maybe they could sign us too. Or, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, like so what's the like how did that start, and like have you enjoyed that at all, like and like other people that you've enjoyed talking to on there?
Yeah, that really did start as a pandemic moment, just frankly for me the really hard thing at the beginning of the pandemic, aside from the obvious, just fear and grief and all the things, was wondering if I was the only one who is experiencing what I was experiencing in our community, just kind of really wanting to connect with other artists to know, like, what does this feel like for you and what are you doing about it? And so that's what we first started talking about. But I think really quickly, immediately, it was obvious to me that everyone was going through some sort of an inner questioning. And so the conversations started to be about the questioning and the changes that were happening both internally and externally. And I was this show is focused on conversations between artists of color. So, we're trapped in this pandemic thing, and also in this like massive upheaval that's happening in the country and in our industry, thoughts about shifting balances. So there was all of that, but honestly, I think what has emerged consistently is just like this kind of inner awakening that most artists, I think, have been having. Why do I do what I do? How do I do what I do? Whether or not the world is collapsing, but just like that, finding that answer to what is this work really all about?
From my very limited perspective through a lot of this, it's like, first off, musicians without an audience. It's like, oh no, like there's no purpose here. And then is there, and how do we connect, and how do we want to? Just seems like a logical step-by-step process that I think most musicians have felt, and to explore the different answers that people have to those questions in the way Amplify does. It's been great to see, and a nice way to connect when we couldn't in any other way.
Yeah. And also, I think for me, the big takeaway has been if this can happen, then anything can happen, right? We all need to live our lives as artists knowing that anything can happen, which is not something that we were ever taught. I was just having a conversation last night about the responsibility, knowing what we know now, the responsibility in mentoring young artists, right? And the person I was talking to said something, he said it so well. He said that he always tells his students, when you're choosing your profession, don't model that profession after like the superstar that you see doing that profession, right? If you want to be a pianist, don't model your aspirations after like the most famous pianist you can see. Model your aspirations after like who you see, kind of like living a work a day, making a living, paying your dues, kind of life.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, then you want to do this job. If you don't want to do that, then you don't actually want to do this job.
I mean, that's a nice reality check that I think not too many people get.
Yeah.
It is easy to look at those at the top.
It made so much sense when he said it to me, right? It's kind of like you could apply the same to relationship.
Anything.
Like, if you want to, get married and you want your husband to be Brad Pitt, then that's probably, you should. Is that your definition of,
Yeah, well, if you want to get married and you just see a bunch of weddings, it's like, well, they look so happy. That's obviously what I want.
Right.
Yeah, right. That's right.
And that's why I don't watch The Bachelor. That's why I'm not a bachelor.
Yeah, because not a lot of, and just bringing it back to mentoring young people, it's like, all the work starts after the wedding, right?
That's right.
It's exactly. It's a lifetime commitment, and if you're not willing to do the work and you're not able to sort of have the perspective of what really makes you fulfilled, then you're always going to be chasing after something that's unattainable.
I mean, another way is like all those superstars that you might be looking up to started somewhere else. They weren't all superstars from the beginning. So what did it take to eventually get there? And even then,
and the reality of that is different than what you see anyway.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Like, are they really happy with what they're doing?
Or you don't see the work that you put, like, you think of like, NFL players or, NBA players. I mean, it's like, oh, they're playing a game for their living, but they're working hard, when they're not playing, they're it's not always like, playing a game, but so Lara, I kind of have like maybe it's like a deeper question, and obviously not expecting to hear like the all answer, but I think Detroit is Detroit Symphony is trying to play music that is that showcases people of color, but I think orchestras in general have a long way to go with that. You know, it's like you said, you know, the standards, you know, you have like, you know, the people that everyone knows and the people that fill seats, but like, you know, have you thought of ways that these other composers and works can be more mainstream in the orchestral setting?
I guess I've always been perplexed by this idea that what we want to hear is what we already know, right? Because I don't know about you, but I don't read the same books over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, and even if like I really love burgers, you know, like I don't want my burger to be the same every single time. I don't know. I can't think of very many other art forms or just forms of entertainment or cultural activities where we always want the same thing. So I think it's just been an entrenched tradition. I don't think anyone's really begged the question. You know, what is exciting if you're going to come to a concert? What is the experience that you want? What do you want to walk away with? Um, uh, this is such a long answer. It's such a layered issue, right? Because I think we've also done things in this field to make people worry that if they don't know the thing, then they won't like the thing.
Right.
So just a spirit of curiosity and openness, and I think that the best message that we can be giving is there it turns out, hey people, it turns out there's so much out there and it's so great, and it's going to be so fun for all of us to discover it going forward, because none of us knew. You know, it's like if there were a museum and there was this one room in the museum and everybody went there for like a really, really long time. And then all of a sudden somebody noticed that there was a door and there was like a whole other series of rooms there filled with
Yeah.
equally beautiful things.
Right. That's a really good analogy, actually, because like, you know, you know, each orchestra kind of puts its own spin on these pieces, but it's, you know, it is the same music, you know, and you know, yeah, just it's true. It's like, you know, in no other art form do you really see the same thing over and over again.
Well, I mean, have you ever talked with a musician who's not a classical musician, like who's like really not a classical musician, and you try to explain what you do, and they're like, "You do what? You like you
Oh
play
yeah.
the same notes, exactly the same notes.
Yeah.
It's like a cover, like you're always doing covers,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
but the same way."
No,
The
because
greatest
I don't do
cover
the
bands ever.
whole thing. I just do my little part of the cover.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we do it 4 times in a week.
And we wear tails. And we wear tails.
It's super cool. You should
Yeah.
try it.
You know, there's something about what you said, and it reminds me of like the first time you listen to the music. Because like Beethoven 5, everybody knows Beethoven 5 and all that. But there are people that haven't ever heard it or haven't listened to it. And like,
Exactly.
I'm kind of envious of them because what a fantastic experience awaits them. But there are so many pieces that are that to us. And the fact that it's not being pursued, or it is being pursued, but
Okay,
you
but
know,
you just said
it's-
something that's a bit elitist. Because there are lots of people who've never heard Beethoven 5. Like, probably the number of people on the planet who haven't heard Beethoven 5 is way, way greater than the people who have. So I think
And I feel like that number is growing. Like, you know, the younger people
Yeah.
aren't listening to Beethoven
Yeah.
5. The more, you know,
So it's like it's two sides of the same coin. It's for those, you know, those people who do come into the concert hall and they hear Beethoven 5 over and over and over again. For them, we can say, whoa, there's way more. And then I also think it's a question of like who are we playing Beethoven 5 for? Who's getting to hear Beethoven 5? Because you're right, to hear Beethoven 5 for the first time is a life-changing experience. It's funny,
I know,
right?
I see exactly what you mean, and the responsibility as the orchestra or the orchestral musicians is maybe put into clearer perspective of like how do we present these opportunities for people to hear all of it.
Uh,
It's tricky.
so Lara, just, you know, just wanted to kind of like to wrap up the interview and just have you kind of just talk about this upcoming concert that you are playing. We talked a little bit about Florence Price and but the piece that you're playing does it have any significance to you in any way?
It does, just because I've been really intimately involved with the revival of Florence Price's music. All those boxes that ended up in the abandoned house were full of piano music, and I've been working for the last 4 or 5 years now, together with a musicologist friend who actually went down and they were in the library at the University of Arkansas, and he went in and pieced together these things and did additions, which are now available via Sherma. But he and I were working really closely, so he was getting the manuscripts and fixing them up so that they were readable, and I was learning them and recording them at the same time. So I really feel I feel a really personal connection to this music. The concerto is great. It's a really wonderful piece of music. It's short. It's kind of showing the whole scope of her creativity and all the different sides of her character. It's so much fun to play. I'm really excited about that. And then we're doing these arrangements of Scott Joplin tunes that are made for piano with strings and winds. And this will be the first time that I'm playing them with orchestra for the album that's coming out this week. We did them with a string quartet. So yeah, it'll be something brand new for me too.
I can't wait to play and hear it. Are there any particular aspects that for somebody listening for the first time that you'd like to give them, or do you want to just let it be the canvas that they would put it upon?
I always kind of like to let things be. I mean, I think if we're talking about Florence Price, she has a very authentic voice that's representing a lot of things about her time and her place. It's kind of an American voice in transition. There's definitely a lot of Dvorak, and then there are elements of spirituals and a little bit of jazz, and there's the third movement is this Juba dance. So it's really, I think it says a lot about the kind of American writing that was happening at the time. Joplin, I would say, if you know Joplin, you're going to be surprised and just discover some new things about his music.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so exciting. I'm looking forward to this too, and just thank you for joining us and sharing your insight with us. It's really amazing to talk to you, and looking forward to seeing you in person.
Yeah, I'll see you guys soon.
That was awesome. Thank you, Laura, for joining us. That was very cool.
That was fantastic. Man. Thank you.
It was great having her.
Yeah.
So what else is coming up?
Well, next week we've got Troupe Vertigo. And then we also have a YPC with some of the same music and same Troupe Vertigo's doing the YPC concerts. And then after that, we've got a couple.
It's my favorite thing. So for the audience that comes to Troupe Vertigo, there are two shows. There's watching them do the crazy acrobatics and all the fantastic stuff, and then there's watching Abe's face while they're flipping upside down right above him, and he has the fear.
Right. I might duck a few times just out of
everyone's
caution.
Paying money to see if they fall on Abe's cello. So please come in.
Yeah. Just the cello.
Right. Yeah. And then after that, we've got a couple weeks with Yader, Beethoven 7, and then Mahler 1.
Yes.
That'll be great. Please join us for that. It's going to be great.
Yeah. And then the first week of March, we've got Classical Roots. And we're really excited, which you've just heard about from Laura. And we're really excited to let everybody know that there will be a special interview that will be launching on February 28th with Wynton Marsalis.
Stay tuned for that.
Very excited about that. Yeah, please tune into that. Thank you for joining us today, and tune in next time.